Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the book club show on Inspire 105.1 FM. My name is Imrana Mahmood, and on today's show I'm going to be sharing some book recommendations. So it's always really wonderful to be introduced to new books, even though I must say my to be read pile is already pretty big, but it brings me a lot of joy buying more books and obviously reading them, or making the intention to read them at least. So definitely, we are coming up to the start of October. I mean, the year has, it does feel like it has rushed past. And this is always a good time, as the weather's changed. I mean, definitely, the weather's changed. I hope everyone's been able to keep safe with the recent flooding that's been taking place in our town. So obviously, please do drive safely. Avoid driving through kind of any large body of water. And I hope that it does settle down in a few days' time. But as the weather is changing and it is unfortunately going to start getting a little bit colder, it does mean it's the perfect season to sit down with the heating on, potentially, with a good book. So I thought this would be a really good opportunity to share some of the books that I've either recently read or am hoping to read soon. But before we move on to that, I wanted to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about the event that I organised last week, which was celebrating the 10th anniversary of Dar Amina Book Club. I have to say, even though, of course, there'll probably be a little bit of bias, it was a really, really wonderful event, alhamdulillah. So for those of you who maybe had missed it, or maybe for any reason completely didn't know it was going on, we had 4 wonderful guests join us in Luton at the Hat Factory. So we had author Tasneem Abdul Rashid, and she has recently published her book called The 30 Before 30 List. We had Dr. Safia Rahman, who has authored the book The Treasury of Aisha, and we also had Samia Aziz, who's is the founder of a podcast called The Diverse Bookshelf. Now, all 3 were also on the show with me the week before last, so we had a really wonderful conversation about their journey into writing, some of the challenges, barriers, joys that comes with being a published author, or kind of working within the literary industry. So it was really interesting to talk to them both on the show and have them in person in Luton for the 10-year anniversary last week of Dar Amina Book Club. And if you are into reading, or maybe you're making the intention to get into reading, joining a book club is always a really good idea. And I know when I speak to people, they feel a little bit apprehensive joining kind of a new group or meeting new people. But I think what I would say is, if you make the intention for anything good, of course, inshallah, that Allah does make it easy. And we are a wonderful group. Again, a little bit of bias there, but we're a wonderful group of women, from different backgrounds, different ages, different faiths. It's a really lovely, diverse group, and you're welcome to join our book club if you are interested. At the moment, we meet every last Tuesday of the month. Sometimes we a little bit change the dates just to avoid half term. So, for example, we are next meeting on the 22nd of October. So it's the 3rd Tuesday of the month, and that's just to avoid the October half term, because obviously families get very busy. So if you are ever interested in joining the book club, please just get in touch with the studio, and I can always share some details if you share your email or number. So that was a quick point just about Dar Amina Book Club. And, it was really wonderful to have the opportunity to, I guess, celebrate 10 years, because, alhamdulillah, doing 10 years of any initiative is, it's really amazing. And I think it's really important. We were featured in the local news, I think it was Luton Today. And, I recall just mentioning the fact that, it's really important in any action that we take that we're kind of consistent, that we're consistent with it. And, it reminds me of the hadith, of the Prophet ﷺ, that, some of the most beloved deeds are those that are consistent, even though they may be small. And that there is something really beautiful, I think, in that we should never, I think, negate any kind of action that we take. So we might deem it really, really small, or we might just not think much of it and not put much value to it. But actually, it's so beloved to Allah and the Prophet ﷺ that you are consistent in what you do, because I think there's something really important there about just being committed to something, that if you're doing something good, just do it to the best of your ability, and to do it often, and to do it frequently, and be regular with it, because that is what creates good habits. And I think that's the type of thing you can really take on as advice, even when it comes to reading. There is a reason, and obviously Allah knows best, why the first revelation to the Prophet ﷺ was Iqra, it was read or recite. And there's so much even within that word, of course, it's the word of Allah, and there's so much depth to that for us to really learn from and think about and contemplate. So if you are hoping to start reading more, I think that's, like I said, you kind of make the intention. So some of the books that I want to recommend today, I thought what I would do, they're not kind of huge like novels. They're kind of maybe about 200 pages, 200 to 300. Actually, no, all the ones I've got today, they're not even, they're about, well, they're less than 200 pages. So they're I don't know if they're called novellas. I don't know if novella is necessarily the right term, but they're basically really succinct. And they're always a good way, I think, to kind of get into reading. So I've got a couple of kind of smaller novels to share. And then I also have a couple of books which I have mentioned on the show before, but they're basically anthologies, so they're different essays. So sometimes maybe you might not always be interested in reading fiction books. You obviously have non-fiction as well. And I think reading essays is always really interesting, because there's so many anthologies out there. You can literally pick a topic that you're interested in, and there will always be wonderful authors that potentially have contributed to kind of some sort of anthology or something like that you can then just pick and choose when you want to read. It doesn't require massive amount of time. Like it's not like you necessarily have to sit down and finish this whole book kind of in one go. So what we'll do is we are going to start off with maybe a book that I am currently reading. I think that will be a good idea. So this book is called Days at the Morisaki Bookshop. So this is being written by Satoshi Yagisawa. And this is actually a translated book, and books that have been translated really, really interesting. And it's certainly something I've maybe recently got into. And actually, this recommendation did come from somebody at Book Club. So I'm just going to give a shout out to Sharika, because she, I think, shared a photo of this book in the WhatsApp, in our WhatsApp group. She'd kind of taken on holiday, and I thought, wow, it's such a beautiful cover. The fact that I had the word bookshop in it, I think, was a selling point straight away, because I do love going to bookshops. But yeah, there's something really lovely about reading, I think, translated works. The fact that somebody, I guess, has taken the time to, who knows, at least 2 languages, right? And I think, it's just really nice way to interact with a story which is, set in a different kind of setting to our own. It could be a different country, it could be a different place, but still able to access it, because obviously, it's been translated, for example, into English, which is obviously what we read in. So this book, I'm just going to read the blurb. So it says, a tale of families' love, new beginnings, and the comfort that can be found in books. From the beginning of summer to early spring, I lived at the Morisaki bookshop. I spent that period of my life in a spare room on the 2nd floor, which room barely got any light, and everything felt damp. It smelled constantly of musty old books. But I will always remember the days I spent there, because that's where my real life began. And I know without a doubt that if not for those days, the rest of my life would have been bland, monotonous, and lonely. The Morisaki bookshop is precious to me. It's a place I know I'll never forget. So that's a really lovely blurb to this book, Days at the Morisaki Bookshop. So like I said, it's been translated. So it's by Satoshi Yagisawa, but it's obviously important to note that it's translated by Eric Ozawa. So, you know, I'm about halfway through this book, and it's definitely something I'm enjoying, primarily because obviously it is definitely about, you know, the main protagonist, who is spending a lot of time helping out her uncle in his bookshop. And it's the way, I guess, she's initially really reluctant. So she's, you know, gone through a certain, she's in a certain situation, and then she's having to, she's invited to live with her uncle, who obviously owns this bookshop, and then she starts helping around. And it's really lovely kind of to see, I guess, her journey with books, where she's not really that invested in this bookshop, and she's kind of just there because she needs to help out. But then over time, you know, she's meeting people and customers who are coming into the shop. She's then becoming interested in the books that are kind of, you know, surrounding her, decides to pick up a book and start reading it. And it's really lovely. It's almost about reading about a book within a book. So, you know, you're reading obviously this story, but you're also then reading other stories that she's also talking about within the book itself. So it's a really, you know, like it says even in the blurb, it really is talking a lot about kind of family relationships. Definitely about the comfort that can be found in books, because I always find it really interesting. I think no matter how you might be feeling in terms of certain emotions or situations you're in, you can definitely pick up a book and resonate with something that you read. So it could be a particular quote, it could be a particular character, and you know, suddenly you have some time where, even though you're the one reading, it's like you're actually sharing something with somebody, and it could be with the author, or you know, the character or the situation that you're reading about. And I think that's what we say when we say that books, you know, they really are designed to create empathy. I think that's what it is. So it's not only you yourself stepping into someone else's shoes. It's almost sometimes, if you're reading the right book at the right time, it's almost allowing somebody else to come into kind of your life and, you know, step into your shoes. And there's so much kind of sharing like going on, even obviously not in a tangible way though. So in terms of a book recommendation, like I said, I'm halfway through the Days at Morisaki Bookshop, but it's, you know, it's a lovely book. Definitely something I would recommend if you kind of wanted to get into writing, or for example, maybe you're already into reading, but maybe you're already a reader and you haven't read many translated works. Again, definitely, you know, high on my list in terms of that. And you know, for example, there's a really lovely translator's note at the end, and who is Eric Ozawa, and he says that any reader who goes looking for all the books mentioned in these pages might not find everything, but that's to be expected, especially in little second-hand places like the Morisaki bookshop. As far as I know, Until the Death of a Girl, the book by Seisei Muro that sparks Sakako's passion for reading in chapter 4, has not been translated into English yet. But the book that played the same role for her friend Tomo, Osama Desai's Schoolgirl, is available in a recent translation by Alison Markin Powell. It shouldn't be difficult to track down English editions of Junichiro's, Tanizaki's, Ryunsuke Akutagawa's, and Sosuke Natsume's well-known books, particularly Kokoro, or Kokoro, one of the most loved novels in Japanese literature. You can find stories by many of the other authors Takako discovers in the major anthologies of Japanese short stories, each of which is almost a bookshop unto itself. And you know what, just on the point of just reading that bit out, the fact that I was struggling to read the names of these authors, I mean, that is definitely, I mean, maybe not our intention when we're reading translated works or any book which is not kind of set, for example, in the UK. It's so important to actually get used to like pronouncing names properly, and we can't do that until we're interacting with people, I guess, who are different from us. And again, you know, it's really important that actually when we're reading books that we're familiarizing ourselves with, with stories from other countries and other cultures. And you know, it's always really important to be able to, I think, just interact with different types of books, not necessarily the ones that we are kind of used to, you know. And that's another really important thing, I guess. You know, I mentioned book club at the beginning, the fact that book clubs really not only introduce you, I guess, to new people and, you know, potential to make friends, but they really do introduce you to books that you wouldn't normally read. And that's definitely be such a massive, beautiful outcome of being part of a book club. There are so many books that I wouldn't normally have read, and this definitely would be one of them, because had someone not recommended the days at Morisaki Bookshop during, you know, kind of as part of our book club, I don't think I ever would have really come across it. Now, on that note, we're going to move on to the next book, which is also a translated. I think this is a translated book from what I can remember. And this book is called Dreams from the Ends. It's by Faiza Gwene. Again, I think that's how to pronounce it. And she's also Just Like Tomorrow. So we read this part of book club a few years ago, actually. And again, it's under like 200 pages, you know. So again, it's kind of a small book that you can kind of read through. So the title, sorry, the blurb of this is Dreams from the Ends is a story of 20-year-old Ahlame, who is spirited, sassy, and wise, but has more problems than she knows how to deal with. Her father, the boss, is permanently disabled after an accident on a building site. Her 16-year-old brother, Fawed, has been permanently excluded from school and seems intent on joining the drug dealers who share their estate, while she is left to deal with the guilt trips from their family back in Algeria. But when she returns home after a 10-year absence, she brokers a kind of truce, both with her homeland and the need to forge a future. Faisal Ghaini's extraordinary novel explores what happens to people when a lid is put on their dreams, and through Ahlame gives a voice to those often denied one. So again, you know, it's a very kind of similar, not a similar style of book, but the fact that it is another kind of smaller novel that you can read. The fact that it's obviously about a family and it's got links to Algeria, again, is really interesting. It's kind of transporting you into I guess, a family situation that we might be able to resonate with, but obviously it isn't necessarily our own. It's really beautifully written. I think, you know, it's quite, I don't know if to say it's an easy read is accurate, but it's something once you start reading, you know, you definitely kind of get into it. And, you know, it's just really interesting to read about the main protagonist kind of situation, and I guess her relationship, with her homeland, you know, the fact that she's been away and then she goes back and how that feels. And I think there's so many of us who were born and bred, for example, in the UK, but have families that have come from, you know, other countries. You know, there's definitely a type of interesting, I think, relationship that we have with whatever we term as our homeland. So homeland, you know, you can define as, is it the place of our birth? Is it the place, you know, our parents, grandparents were born? So that, you know, there's a really interesting, I think, kind of very interesting things to explore, you know, when we talk about things about, you know, our homeland and how we deal, I guess, with situations and family, depending on, which circumstance or situation, you know, we're living with. So Faisal Ghaini, this is it's not her most recent book, but this is a book, again, that Dreams from the Ends, that we read as part of book club. So that's another book that you can kind of add to your book list. And Actually, I'm so happy that I literally did think that, what kind of book recommendation should I make today? So those two, so the first one plays at the Morisaki bookshop. I'm halfway through. Dreams of the Ends, or From the Ends, is something that I've already read. And then I'm just going to share, I've got a few more to share. So just before we go to the breaks, we've got a few minutes. I'm going to just introduce a book that I haven't yet read. I bought it on sale, and sometimes you get the bookstores go on half price books, and I have to really fight temptation to buy too many because I am running out of space on my bookshelf. However, like I said, it's always really lovely to kind of read a book. Or it's always just really love to buy books even. Obviously you do need to make the intention to read them. So this next book I'm going to talk about is called The Cat Who Saved Books. This is by Susuke Natsukawa. So this is not a book that I've read yet. So the back of this book, it says, Grandpa used to say it all the time, books have tremendous power, but what is that power really? So that's a really kind of profound, I think, question at the back. So there's a little note inside which says, Natsuki Books was a tiny second-hand bookshop on the edge of town. Inside, towering shelves reached the ceiling, everyone crammed full of wonderful books. Rintaro Natsuki loved this space that his grandfather had created. He spent many happy hours there, reading wherever he liked. It was a perfect refuge for a boy who tended to be something of a recluse. After the death of his grandfather, Rintaro is devastated and alone. It seems he will have to close the shop. Then a talking tabby cat called Tiger appears and asks Rintaro for help. The cat needs a book lover to join him on a mission. This odd couple will go on 3 magical adventures to save books from people who have imprisoned, mistreated, and betrayed them. Finally, there is one last rescue that Rintaro must attempt alone. The Cat Who Saved Books is a heartwarming story about finding courage, caring for others, and the tremendous power of books. So I think you can probably understand, as somebody who loves books, why I definitely picked this up, right? So obviously I got a great bargain because it was half price, but there's something, I haven't started reading it, but I actually can't wait, even though it has been on my bookshelf for a while. But it's an international bestseller. I think anybody who loves cats and loves books, I mean, come on, it's like a no-brainer, right? Unfortunately, we don't have a cat. My daughters are very desperate to have a cat. They're trying to convince their dad. I am kind of sitting on the fence. I'm like, yeah, I love cats. I'm kind of seeing, how much can they persuade their dad. So we will see. But please, if you are listening, then maybe on behalf of my children, do dua for them that they maybe potentially will be able to convince their dad to get a cat. But in the meantime, we can make do with books about cats and about books. So 2 wonderful, I think, kind of combinations. So yeah, that's definitely one. If you like cats and you kind of like books a little bit, I would recommend that you get The Cat Who Saved Books by Susuke Natsukawa. So again, this book is just about, I think it's about 210 or 211 pages. So all the books I've shared so far, like I said, they're quite small, kind of small novels that you can really kind of get your teeth into. So we are approaching very soon the first break. And in the second half of the show, I'll talk a little bit more about a couple of book recommendations I have. Again, there's 2 books that I have not yet read that I'm due to read. So I will share those and a couple of others, because I did mention anthologies that you can read as well, because reading essays by maybe writers or certain topics that you're interested in is really a good way to, I guess, increase the breadth of understanding about the world. So the books that I'll share or quickly kind of introduce you to in the second half of the show is Cut from the Same Cloth, which is edited by Sabina Akhtar, and Gathering, which is a woman of colour on Nature, which is edited by Duri Shahwa and Nasia Sawaskus. So those will be the books that we can talk a little bit about in the second half of the show. We'll also talk a little bit about a poetry book, because you know, if you listen to my show before, how much I love poetry, and poetry is a really beautiful, different way of interacting with writing. Again, it's something you can read, which is really short, but it's something that, you know, the idea is you really read and you contemplate, and then maybe even, you know, inspire, you know, your own writing, which I think is always really wonderful. It's really great to be able to explore your own writing, whether it's journaling or writing poetry. Anyway, so we are headed to a break now. So grab yourselves maybe a cup of tea and a couple of biscuits, and we will be back shortly. Assalamu alaikum.
This program will continue after the break. Continue listening to Inspire FM. Inspire FM.
Inspire 105.1 FM.
Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrated that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "Whoever relieves a Muslim of a burden from the burdens of the world, Allah will relieve him of a burden from the burdens of the hereafter. And whoever covers the faults of a Muslim, Allah will cover his faults for him in the world and the hereafter. And Allah is engaged in helping the worshipper as long as the worshipper is engaged in helping his brother."
Enjoy quality and tasty 100% authentic halal Chinese and Thai food from Gao Express, brought to you by the team behind Top Pizza in Luton. Choose from all your delicious Chinese and Thai favourites. Then order for delivery or collection from Gao Express in Wellington Street, Luton, Marketplace, Stevenage, and now also on Nightingale Road in Hitchin. Open daily midday till late. Find the number or order online at Gao, that's GAO, express.co.uk, or like Gao Express on Facebook.
Had an accident, a bump, trip or fall? Then you need Claims Specialists, your first choice for accident claims. The specialist claims company on Dunstable Road in Luton. With excellent access to expert solicitors and on a no-win, no-fee basis, Claims Specialists use their 30 years' experience to help get you the best compensation possible. For injuries at work, taxi, PCO and private hire incidents, road accidents and vehicle damage, medical negligence, plus rented housing disrepair. In short, when you need to make any claim, click on claimspecialists.co.uk or call 01582 733 222.
عن أبي سعيد سعد بن سنان الخدري رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: لا ضرر ولا ضرار.
For the tastiest sizzling steaks around, book now for Taurus Luton Boot Street, LU1 2EP. And not just for the best grass-fed and dry-hung aged halal steaks, as Taurus Luton also serve amazing chicken dishes, burgers, sumptuous sides, salads and vegetarian options, with mouth-watering mocktails too. All this and with excellent service. View the menu, book your table, or even party or celebration event at taurusluton.co.uk or call 01582 750 213.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम, मेरा नाम किरण है। कोट कश्मीर ऑर्फन रिलीफ ट्रस्ट मेरा एक खूबसूरत घर है, जहां मेरे साथ सैकड़ों यतीम और बेसहारा बच्चों की तालीम और तरबियत और पुरसुकून माहौल में परवरिश हो रही है, और ये सब कुछ आपके तावन से मुमकिन है। अल्लाह से दुआ है कि अल्लाह करीम आपको सदा सलामत रखे, और उम्मीद है कि आप इसी तरह अपना प्यार, मोहब्बत और तावन जारी रखेंगे। कोट UK ऑफिस 0300123774 court.org.uk.
Are you thinking of starting a podcast or looking to give your podcast a new home? Why not hire Inspire FM's dedicated recording studio? With rates starting at just £25 per booking, our podcast studio is a fully functional, acoustically treated space for up to 4 people, and it's set up and ready to use as soon as you arrive. For more information or to inquire about booking, email us at info@inspirefm.org or send us a DM on our social media accounts at InspireFM Luton.
From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 10:13.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Book Club Show on Inspire 105.1 FM. My name is Imrana Mahmood, and on today's show I am sharing some of my book recommendations. These are books that either I have already read, in the middle of reading, or are on my to be read pile, which is increasing and it's getting pretty high. But let's ignore that because there is a lot of joy in buying books. Obviously a lot more joy in reading them. In the first half of the show, I shared 3. So we had The Cat Who Saved Books by Susuke Natsukawa, Dreams from the Ends by Faizai Gwene, and Days at the Morisaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yagisawa. All of them, I'm pretty sure, are all translated works, which I am recently getting into. I think it's really great to be reading about books which are set in a completely different environment and setting that I would personally be kind of familiar with, and I think that really broadens our horizons. And it's always lovely to kind of, I guess, transcend borders in that way, because borders are man-made, and the fact that we can use books to really create connection with characters that we wouldn't normally maybe have the opportunity to necessarily interact with, I think is really, really lovely. Now in the second half of the show today, I'm going to talk about another 4 books, I would say, and so we've got, actually, how many of them? 2 of them are ones that I have read already, and 2 that I am still planning to read. So I'm trying to mix it up today a little bit. So what I will do, though, is I will start off with the anthologies that I have. So like I said, if you find that you don't have much time to read, maybe you're working, or you're a parent or carer and really busy with the children, sometimes it can just be that, oh, you know what, I've only got maybe about 10 minutes and you want to have some me time, and you just want to have a bit of time to just kind of relax and think about something else other than your immediate things that are in your immediate vicinity. So I have 2 non-fiction books, and they are both anthologies. So they are things or essays kind of written by different writers, and they've contributed to these 2 books. One of them I have shared on the show before. This is probably, I can't remember if it was before COVID, and I had about 3-4 writers of this anthology who joined us. So this is Cut from the Same Cloth by which has been edited by Sabina Akhtar. So this anthology is about Muslim women on life in Britain. So I had the pleasure of having Sabina Akhtar and about 3 other writers. I interviewed them on the Book Club show. So I thought it'd be really lovely just to bring this back and talk a little bit about it today, because it really is, as women who, whether we wear hijab or we don't, or even, for example, for people of a completely different faith who aren't Muslim and want to understand some of the experiences that Muslim women have and their feelings. So either way, I think is really a beautiful resource to have. So what I'll do is I'll read a little bit of the blurb at the back, and the blurb itself, it starts off with these kind of set of questions, which some of us who wear hijab will kind of definitely probably have been asked some of these questions at some point in our lives. Do you wear that at home? Where are you really from? Does he make you wear that? Do you believe in British values? Can I see your hair? Can you be a feminist? Why don't you just take it off? Are you hot in that? Do you wear that in the shower? Are you oppressed? From modern pop culture to anti-Blackness, faith and family, politics, education, creativity and working life, this anthology gives visibly Muslim women a space to speak. Then it says, spoiler alert, we won't be answering the usual questions. Perceived as a visual representation of Islam, hijab-wearing Muslim women are nevertheless rarely afforded a platform on their own terms. Harangued by awkward questions, radical commentators sensationalizing our existence, non-Muslims and non-hijabis making assumptions, men speaking on our behalf, or stereotypical norms being perpetuated by the same old faces, hijabis are tired. cut from the same cloth, seeks to tip the balance back in our favour. Here, 21 women of all ages and races look beyond the tired tropes, exploring the breadth of our experience and spirituality. It's time we, as a society, stop with the hijab splaining and make space for the women who know. So you have essays by Negla Abdullah, Zahra Adams, Fatima Ahdash, Sabina Akhtar, Maryam Ansar, Shaista Aziz, Suma Deen, Khadija Al-Shayal, Ruqayya Harris, Fatah Hassan, Raisa Hassan, Sumaya Kasim, Romana Lasker Dawood, Sohaima Munzur Khan, Asha Mohammed, Sophia Rahman, Yvonne Ridley, Aisha Rimi, Khadija Ratimi, Sophie Williams, Khudan Yusuf. So what a spectacular list of names. So you've got these wonderful writers who have written essays for this book, cut from the same cloth, which has been edited by Sabina Akhtar. And do you know what? It was such a joy to read this. I think absolutely they hit the nail on the head. As hijabi Muslim women, we do have to handle a lot of questions, and these come both from within the community and outside, which tend to be very loaded. They tend to be sometimes quite judgmental, you know, and that can vary from how people feel we should be wearing hijab, or how, you know, we should be acting in a certain way, or the fact that, you know, there's so much, you know, and I think it's in the book, we're not always afforded, you know, kind of compassion, I think, from people. I think there's this idea that Muslim women who wear hijab, we are the be-all and end-all of Islam in terms of how Islam is represented. And I don't think Muslim men are necessarily treated in the same way. I think those of us, for example, in the UK context, you know, women who, if they're not obviously wearing hijab, I think they get judged for not wearing it. But the women who are wearing hijab, you know, they get judged not only by Muslim men, but sometimes by Muslim women who don't wear hijab as well. Or to be honest, it's sometimes really sad to see that even Muslim women, all who wear hijab, then start policing how other women are wearing or not wearing hijab, how they think they should be. And it does become very, I think, quite unhelpful. I think when all of us are out here trying to be the best Muslims, inshallah, that we can be. And, you know, everything, you know, we are in a journey back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, if we are making attention that, you know, we want to wear hijab, of course, you know, there's a certain way, obviously, in Islam to do things, which I think, you know, strictly speaking, you know, we are all aware of. But, you know, I think for those of us who are living in a country like the UK, where Islamophobia is on the increase, where we, as you know, because of social media, I think young girls are being pushed this whole narrative of what a Eurocentric beauty ideal is, and how, you know, body image, and there's so many messages that not only girls but young boys are getting in terms of what women should be and how they should look. So I think we should afford a little bit more compassion to Muslim women. Personally, I think that, you know, we are also flawed just like any other human being. And I think what this book, Cut from the Same Cloth, does is it really does give you an idea of some of the insight into how Muslim women are kind of coping, you know, with their own lived experience, their daily realities of being hijabi Muslim women. So you have a whole array, you know, of essays. So just to give you an example of some of the kind of titles of the book, for example, an essay written by Ruqayya Harris is called "The Quest for Modesty in the Digital Age." You have one by Sohaima Munzur Khan, which is "I'm Not an Answer, I Am the Question." You've got, for example, an essay written by Maryam Ansar, which is called "Youth in the Time of Madrasas." You have, you know, one which is written by the editor of the book, Sabina Akhtar, which is called "Smile." So, you know, there's another one called "Racial Perceptions" by Khadija Ratimi. So, and then the one by Fatah Hassan, "So I Can Talk to Guys Now." So, just by reading a few examples of some of the titles of the essays, I think it does give you an idea of exactly, how much you could really, learn from this book. And I think when it comes to reading, learning is definitely one of the things that we're able to achieve. And it's really important that we are kind of gaining knowledge, not in terms of just kind of the rulings and the fiqh of Islam, but actually the lived experiences of other Muslims, because at the end of the day, we are an ummah, and we want to understand as an ummah, what are our trials and tribulations, at the same time, what are the things that bring us joy, and where we're able to unite, and just be not just better people, but I guess, yes, in some ways, a better representation of what true Islam is. And true Islam has always been about compassion. It's been about gentleness. It's been about bringing joy into the world. So we definitely, I think, sometimes you need to do more of that. So I would definitely recommend Cut from the Same Cloth: Muslim Women on Life in Britain. And again, for many Muslim women who maybe are or aren't wearing the hijab, it's definitely a book that I think you're able to read and really understand a lot of things. But again, for Muslim men, I think sometimes there is this thing of, but if it's about a particular topic, that book's not for me. But I think we do need to kind of get out of that kind of rut that we're in and really start reading books that we wouldn't normally read. And especially, I think I would say to any Muslim men, Muslim brothers who are listening, definitely, if you might be reading particular books, but these are the type of books, especially well, regardless really of any relationship, whether you're married or you have daughters, or the point is that you, I guess, as Muslim men, have a responsibility. Muslim women, the fact that the Prophet ﷺ, even in his final sermon, he mentioned about women's rights, and it's not just the rights of women who are related to you. I think we all have a certain degree of accountability in front of Allah when it comes to Muslim women of your ummah, because we are, especially I think those of us who are hijabi, you're undergoing a lot of dehumanization. We are experiencing, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of Islamophobia. And that protection, of course, that protection should, in the first instance, come from, maybe our fathers and brothers and our husbands or our sons. But ultimately, that does, and it should, and it always has extended to the ummah. So there is a degree of responsibility that Muslim men have to other Muslim women, regardless of the relationship that you have. And the best way to do that is, start reading about, what Muslim women are experiencing and what they're going through, and to have that kind of, I think, empathy. And I think it's important that you're able to read that for yourself. Maybe, I don't know, encourage a Jummah khutbah on the topic. I don't know. It's just a suggestion. So moving on to another anthology that I have. So this, again, I haven't completely finished reading this one, but I did mention this in a show recently, that this is called Gathering Women of Color on Nature. This is edited by Dore Shahwa and Nasia Sarah Skuse, which I think, I'm hoping, is the right way to pronounce it. So this, you have Gathering brings together essays by women of color across the UK writing about their relationship with nature in a genre long dominated by male, white, middle-class writers. In redressing this balance, this moving collection considers climate justice, neurodiversity, mental health, academia, inherited stories, colonialism, whiteness, music, hiking, and so much more. These personal, creative, and fierce essays will broaden both conversations and horizons about our living world, encouraging readers to consider their own experience with nature and their place within it. So the reason I actually bought this book initially is Dr. Safia Rahman, who was on the panel last week for the Dar Amana Book Club event, has written an essay for this. She has actually also written an essay for Cut from the Same Cloth, which I just discussed. So you can probably tell I am a fan of Safia Rahman. I think, she writes beautifully. She has a lot of wisdom. to share. But the other thing, obviously, with gathering women of color nature is because I do like spending time in nature. I have to say I wasn't always like that though, because I grew up in London, didn't always have access to like the countryside, didn't do much hiking when I was younger. But alhamdulillah for my husband, who I think grew up obviously in Luton. I think he did a lot of kind of hikes with young Muslims, which many of you in Luton might be aware of. And I know they really got, groups at a young age, getting out in nature, doing hiking, reading maps and doing all the stuff, which I'm still not so confident with. But I have learned to love going on hikes. As a family, we've done climbing mountains, which is really fantastic. So we've done Scafell Pike, we've done Snowdon, Mount Snowdon in Wales. The only one I haven't done yet is Ben Nevis in Scotland. That is on my bucket list. And I do feel a bit kind of anxious when I think about it, because obviously it's the biggest one out of the three. So out of Snowdon, Scafell Pike, obviously Ben Nevis is the largest. But inshallah, it's on my bucket list, and I will make intention, and hopefully I can kind of conquer the summit there. But hiking is beautiful, and going out for walks, and even, to be honest, it seems really far away, but all of us experienced lockdown. The fact that we were only during COVID times able to go on what I think was like half an hour walk every day, while everyone was trying to obviously contain, keep everything contained. And I think it was really in those times that, just being outside and walking became such a huge blessing. Just getting a bit of, a bit of fresh air and just seeing trees and grass, and, God, it's so important. And I think sometimes, for those of us who maybe since COVID now maybe work remotely, mostly from home, maybe there's a lot of hybrid working going on, or maybe we're constantly just driving to and from the office, or we're constantly on a train. We're not interacting much with I think greenery. All we're probably seeing is our laptop screens on loads of tarmac, and that can be quite depressing, I think. So just going out for regular walks or daily walks, get your 10,000 steps in is such a important thing to do, not just for our body, for our mind as well. So gathering women of colour on nature, though, it brings a whole depth when we talk about nature, because we do know that when, especially in this country, we talk about nature, or we talk about nature writing specifically, it is dominated by white middle class men. Those are when you watch TV nature programs, they're the type of people who are usually hosting a program like this. They're traveling around the world talking about all their experiences, and yet those of us who literally maybe come from certain countries because of our family connections, or the fact that we are also interacting with nature and the countryside, even from a Muslim perspective, Allah has sent us as custodians of the earth. It is our very job to look after the earth, to look after the environment. I do have to say, sometimes walking around Luton, I can see families kind of finishing school and the children are just littering everywhere, and it doesn't seem to be an issue. And God, that really does make me a little bit annoyed, because something as simple as just throw your rubbish in the bin, right? It's such a simple thing to do. I'm imploring everybody that if you see somebody who's basically just thrown something out in the street, very politely, I think it's okay for you to say to them, oh, look, I think you've just dropped that. And then, there's a bin literally, a few steps down the road. There's such a mistreatment of, I think, of our world and of the earth. And of course, I'm talking on a very micro level, right? I'm talking about how individually our attitude is to our environment, and really looking after it. The most simplest thing is to, make sure you're recycling at home, right? Make sure that you're not throwing your rubbish and litter out on the street, that you're using, bins that have been provided. But those are really simplistic terms. Of course, when we start looking at the macro level, we start talking a little bit about capitalism. We start talking about the way the richest countries on this planet are dumping their rubbish into poorer countries and expecting somehow that that's not going to have some sort of repercussion, right? So when we talk about climate justice, there is basically a macro and both a micro level, and we need to tackle all of it because we want to create an environment for our children and the new generation which is going to be livable, breathable, you know, and that we're able to really flourish as human beings. Now, this book, though, Gathering, is obviously specifically written by women of color. So they're not all, this one is not all written by Muslim women, whereas Cut from the Same Cloth was. So you have, again, different types of essays. You know, there's really interesting ones. So, for example, the first chapter is being written by Louisa Adjo Parker. This is a British Ghanaian in the West Country. You have The Stones of Scotland, written by Alicia Bir Muhammad. You've got Catherine Cleaver, who's written an essay called A Pencil, a Trowel and a Dinosaur Bone. Dr. Siwa Rahman's written From God We Come and to God We Return. There's another chapter which is written, which is called In a Relationship with Sugar by Maya Chowdhury. So I have read some of these. I thought they were really, really insightful. I read In a Relationship with Sugar while we were on a family trip to the Lake District this summer. And we went to quite a well-known place, which is called Rydal Mount. So many places in the Lake District are associated with really well-known kind of writers and authors. And it's really interesting to learn about, you know, the contributions they made to literature, the fact that they lived in particular houses in the Lake District. I think the privilege that came with living in these areas, being able to just, you know, sit in a random person's house that you've been invited to and just write about whatever you like. I mean, how wonderful is that? But this particular essay, for example, In Relationship with Sugar, it obviously talks about colonialism and the way that British traded, you know, with countries. And obviously it's not always acknowledged, but, you know, Britain, they traded in drugs, right? I mean, you know, when we talk about opium, that was a big deal. But the way I think British history lessons kind of gloss over the trade, or things that they trade when it came to India and China, etc. But ultimately, you know, sugar being such a massive commodity, and actually, you know, what did that mean? And when it came to the slave trade, you know, the fact that Britain had a massive, I guess, hand in the slave trade, right? They were literally driving the slave trade to their own ends and for their own means. And when you're sitting in a place like Rydal Mount and Lake District eating carrot cake, which I was, an essay like In a Relationship with Sugar really does make you think, you know, about what we consume, what we eat, where we're sitting. So yeah, I think definitely if you're the type of person who enjoys walking, enjoys nature, you know, and again, whether you are a woman of color or not, this is definitely a book that you can really kind of interact with and learn from. And you know, from an Islamic perspective, again, the essay written by Safia Rahman, From God We Come and to God We Return, you know, she mentions the idea that, you know, the Sharia, which is obviously Islamic law, the literal meaning of it is like going to the watering hole. And I think, again, that's something now, for example, I didn't really know. So again, that concept of, you know, what does that mean, and the significance of water in our faith, you know, the fact that, you know, when it's mentioned in Islam, it has such huge significance in very different, you know, situations. So basically, those are some of the books I wanted to talk about now in the second half. And I know we're approaching the end of the show very quickly. The only other one that I did want to end on is one poetry book, which is called The Things You May Find Hidden in My Ear by Musab Abu Taha. This is written by a Palestinian poet, and these poems emerge directly from the experience of growing up and living in constant lockdown and often direct attack. So definitely, because of the ongoing genocide in Palestine, I would definitely recommend that you do read Palestinian writers and make yourself more familiar with them. But this is obviously a poetry book, and beautiful poetry it is. And last but not least, I was just going to mention Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I'm going to feature this book in another show down the line, because this is a book Dharma Book Club has just chosen as their book club, their book for October. So we're really looking forward to reading this book. Again, it's kind of one of those smaller novels. It's less than 200 pages. This is actually a whole book series. So this is book 1 of this particular series. So it's called Before the Coffee Gets Cold. I love the book cover. The illustration is basically a small coffee table with 2 cups of coffee, a lamp, 2 beautiful chairs, and a cat sitting right there. So what's not to love? But I will definitely feature and review this book in a future show, inshallah. And in the meantime, I hope that you have a wonderful book. I hope I've managed to introduce some new books to you on the show, that you're able to add things to your book list. And I would always love to hear from you if you have book recommendations for me, or if there is a book that I've recommended that you've decided to read. Let me know. Did you love it? Did you hate it? I'm always interested to know people's relationships and their kind of their reading habits and what's going on. So please do feel free to get in touch. And I think in the meantime, I think you can always just read little essays. If you're not into reading, you feel like you don't have time, audiobooks are obviously a really big thing right now. They're not necessarily something that I
वक्फे के बाद साबरा हुसैन पेश करेंगी दीनी मालूमात पर मबनी प्रोग्राम दीन और दुनिया। सुनते रहिए इंस्पायर FM।